welcome to today's ClayMinar Series Session 2. Today our speakers are going to be Andy Elwood Madden and Janice Bishop, and they will be talking about how to apply for student grants, particularly in the context of the student grants for the Clay Mineral Society. If you can, please make sure that all of your microphones are muted for the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat, and we will get to those questions after the end of the session. So without further ado, Andy and Janice, please continue.
All right, thank you, Shelby. And thanks to all of you for joining. Thanks to the CMS for hosting. And as well, thanks for Shelby for organizing the event. And I want to we wanted to reiterate, please ask questions throughout the event. So if you can type it into the chat, we will try to monitor it and keep an eye on it. And that way we can have a bit of a dialogue along the way if possible too. So. Thank you again to the Clay Mineral Society for hosting it. So the first step, if you're thinking about a student award, and we hope that you are a student grant, that you're heading to clays.org, which is the Clay Mineral Society homepage. And this is just a image of the website, but along here you can see all the different links, and one of the links we're going to follow today is for where you'll access the awards and grants, but there's a lot of other great information that you should have this bookmarked and ready to go. And also, before we get too much into the details of the student grants and awards, I want to acknowledge that this is certainly a group effort, and there are a number of volunteers in the Clay Mineral Society who really work to make the student experience a positive experience and participate in administering and evaluating these awards. And so, when I am the current chair of the Student Grant Committee, before that, Dr. Janice Bishop, who's our co-presenter today, had everything running very smoothly and appreciated that. And then you can see we've got some new people rotating onto the committee this year. So we appreciate that it's a global effort of volunteers and a global participation of students, and we're very excited to be able to do this. Today we're specifically going to talk mostly about two student opportunities through the CMS. They're the research grants and the travel awards, and everything that we are describing today is all found and accessed on clays.org underneath this awards and grants tab, where you can see there's a separate page for the research grants and the travel awards. And you might be asking, okay, well, who is this for and who is eligible? You must be a student of Clay Science and Technology. That's a pretty broad brush, and it's meant to be broad. There's no restrictions with regards to nationality, gender, age. In fact, CMS membership is not required. If you're awarded one of these grants or awards, then that'll bring you into CMS membership. And students may receive no more than a total of 2 travel awards and 2 research grant awards, which means that even if you've applied before, consider applying again. And before I turn it over to Dr. Bishop, I want to give a quick summary of some advice that you're going to hear later on, just to get to the gist, and then we'll go into the details. First thing is apply for both grants. So we'll see in detail here coming up about how to apply for the research grant and what that's all about, and then also the travel grant, which is going to support your trip to the meeting this summer, the Clay meeting. And you can apply for both. And number one bit of advice there is read the website and application guidelines and requirements carefully. So as long as you're following those sort of step by step, asking questions if you're not sure. And then we're going to present today the rubric used to evaluate the research grants. So make sure that you consider the rubric yourself and see how you're doing. Make sure that you've got everything laid out relative to the rubric. Plan your reference writers in advance, who provide them with helpful information. So let them know what you're working on. Make sure that they're aware of what this opportunity means to you and how important it is and what specifically you're asking for and all that. And the more information you can provide your reference writers in advance, the better a job they'll be able to do to support you. And then finally, ask questions. So there's an email address there, cms@clays.org, which will go to Mary Gray, our amazing CMS administrator. And also I put my email address there, amadden@ou.edu, as current chair of the committee. So please reach out, ask questions, and we're happy to help guide things. So let me take a moment and see if there's any questions on the chat. We'll just take a quick breath. And I can't actually see the chat bar.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody who's currently on, if anybody has a question so far, now's a good time. Ask your question. Otherwise, you'll have more opportunities as we go along.
All right.
I guess let's continue then. So we're going to focus for a little bit on the research grant. And the first question then is, what can you ask for? So the funding is up to $3,000. So you can ask for less, or you can ask for $3,000. And if you have a project that requires more than that, it's okay to list, well, the project's going to cost X, 5,000 or 3,020 or whatever, and that you're requesting 3,000 here, and the other funds would come from yourself or from another source, and that's fine. And so you can ask for travel funding if you need to do some field work or some lab work at another facility, or some lab work that requires like instrument time for an SEM or synchrotron or something. And you can, but you cannot ask for money to travel to other meetings, or even the CMS meeting. So it's travel to do research, because it's a research grant. And you can also ask for equipment or supplies or analyses that are required for your project. All right. And then what do you need to submit? So that the application online has a list of all these things. And generally there's information about the applicant, about you. There's a personal statement, and then there's a budget section, and then there's a description of your project and a short CV, and then evaluations from 2 faculty members or people who can give you a reference letter and are familiar with your work. Okay, and we set up this rubric in recent years. Back 10 years ago or so, we had trouble with students not following directions. And I thought it would be really helpful for everyone as you go through your path. You're going to probably apply for other proposals as well. And it's important to follow instructions and to know what is being evaluated, what are the criteria, and try your best to follow that. So we generated this sort of rubric. And so lately people have been better at following instructions, and please do, because some people forget to do some part of it. So there's this a statement on how this will benefit you, and then your qualifications, objectives, and importance of the project. So this is in the research description itself, the objectives and importance, and then the design of the project, the relation to clay science. And in the budget, we don't want to just see, oh, okay, I need 3,000 for this lab equipment. It needs to say, like, I'm going to be doing whatever, 1,500 for this and 1,200 for that and 300 for this. And it should itemize what you need. And then financial need also, because some people really have no other sources of funding, and others might have many sources of funding. So in any case, that's the rubric that we use. And I think in the past, often students forgot to sign their application. And so we do want people to sign it. So that's part of following all the instructions. So for how will this benefit you professionally? So there could be a lot of reasons. This could be enabling opportunities for you that aren't available at your university. It could be covering the cost of experiments that will extend your research, or there could be other benefits. And so we'd like you to think about, why do you care? Why do you want this grant? Besides just money, what will this do for your project and for you personally? So, and it doesn't need to be long. It's a short statement. So we also have a few places in the application form that we just wanted to step through. There's a place to list other grants. So if your project requires like a lot of funding, so maybe $7,000 or something, and you've already found 2,000 from some other source, you could list that here. And that way we know that, okay, you've already acquired some of the funds you need for this project and you need an additional 3,000. So that's helpful to know for the committee. And for your budget, we give you several lines, and if you need to, you can fill out a small text here to explain all the details. But we do want to see, like, oh, I need to buy 10 sieves and each one costs $200, or I need to run these analyses and each analysis costs $5,000, or each analysis costs $50 and I'm going to run 5 or something. And so that there are Andy, can you go back?
Yeah.
There, okay, there we go. So just to please put details in here, and not just, oh, I need 1,000 for analyses, I need 1,000 for equipment. It needs to say which equipment and which analyses. Okay, thank you. Okay. And here are some more examples. So when you're itemizing that, do provide details. And it's okay if you're traveling to the field, then it can be the cost of how much the gas is for your car or a rental car or an airline ticket, and room and board, and also any equipment or supplies. Okay, thank you. And then for the research grant, there's some instructions in red, and please follow the instructions and then delete this text so that the red part is not taking up space. So delete that and put your text there, and you're allowed 2 pages, and we don't want 3 or 5 or 10 pages, just the 2, and you're allowed to use figures, and we don't want teeny tiny font. So please use 12-point font and single space paragraphs. So that's it for that, I guess. And then each proposal should list the significance of the project and the background and the objectives. And this is on the website and it's on the form, so you can read that and think about it. And as Andy suggested before, it's a good idea to think about this ahead of time and think about your project, and maybe discuss this with your faculty advisor as well as you're preparing it. And of course, the description of work. So what you're planning to do, how you're going to do it. Okay. And then you're allowed 1 page for a CV. So some people list more than 1 page sometimes, or we'd really like that to just be the 1 page. And we don't actually have limitations on the size of the font on your CV, but it should be readable.
Okay. So
Yeah, let's switch back to Andy.
sounds great. So we can take a pause just for a minute and see
Oh,
if
yeah.
any questions come up about the research grant, and then we'll shift gears a little bit into talking about the travel award.
Did anyone online have questions about the research grants? I don't see any questions in the chat.
And maybe I'll just go back real quick and see, I did hyperlink here. If I click on that, it takes us just so you can see the form real quickly. And this is again accessed through the clays.org website that we showed. And so this is where we were, Dr. Bishop was saying, briefly state how receiving this grant would benefit you professionally, your previous other source of funding, budget, faculty, evaluators. And so again, you can read through that carefully and ask us if you have any questions. These are the forms that your faculty or your evaluators will fill out on your behalf and submit. All right, so.
When are the applications due this year?
Great question. When are the applications due this year? So we said February 1st is going to be the deadline for the travel grant, because a little additional lead time is needed to plan for the travel to the conference. And then the deadline for the research grant is March 1st. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
All right, so let me jump back ahead. Okay, so to be specific about the CMS Travel Award, it's designed to help support students to attend the Clay Mineral Society conference and not for use for other conferences. It's very exciting this year. The Clay Mineral Society conference is joint with the Asian Clay Conference in Honolulu, Hawaii in June 2024. So if you apply for this, you'll be applying for support to travel to this conference. And what you can ask for is up to $1,000 per award for intracontinental travel, or $1,500 for intercontinental travel. And what you can use that money for includes the meeting registration, which as a student, you'll have the student rate. Field trips that either run before or after the conference starts. If you'd like to attend those, you can use this money. There's a banquet at which awards are presented. So you'll use this money to pay for the banquet ticket. And if you are awarded one of these awards, it's expected that you'll attend the banquet. And there are also often pre-meeting workshops that, yep, there it is. Hello. The pre-meeting workshop, often very helpful skill-based or other focused workshops to keep an eye out for. Travel to the meeting, back from the meeting, and then also lodging while you're at the meeting. So you can use that award. What can you not ask for? And then what are some details for how this travel grant works?
Andy, could I jump in here? This is Joe Stuckey.
Please.
Regarding the meeting this year, if you want to go back to that previous slide. Yeah, the next one. The banquet will be included in the registration fee. So they will not need to budget for additional include banquet ticket. And there will be no pre-meeting workshop this year. We had one planned, but the person planning it, his government would not allow him to do it. So we had to cancel that workshop. But there will be a field trip following the meeting. So just those little bits of information for this meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so we did say that travel awards may not be used to support travel to other meetings, just this one. And expenses for meals can't be claimed with this. And travel funds will be reimbursed during or after the meeting for which the funds are requested. And so that means that if you win one of these awards, you should keep your receipts and be ready to document your specific expenses. Only allowable costs actually incurred will be reimbursed up to the maximum amount awarded. So for example, if your travel costs are less than you originally anticipated, you'll provide documentation of the actual costs and you'll be reimbursed for those actual costs and not the original requested amount. And that's, I think, one thing that I would say we've seen often is on the application budget, which we'll get to. Sometimes it's not clear. We really want people to document their expenses and then make sure they're showing what part of that expense they're asking for the award. And we'll be more clear about that in just a moment. So for the travel grant, similar to the research grant, there's a link from the CMS homepage and takes you to this form that you'll fill out and you will return. And so we'll just kind of walk through some of these components of the application as we did for the research grant. There will be some information about yourself, your estimated costs of travel, and then out of those estimated costs, what are the total funds that you're requesting? You'll provide your conference abstract, and on the abstract, requesting that you need to indicate which session you're submitting to. And then also include a one-page letter from your advisor. And a key thing here is that when you submit this application for this award, you are not submitting your abstract to the conference. You're just including the abstract as part of your award application. So it's really important that you also submit your abstract to the meeting organizers as well as the CMS office. So be sure you're submitting your abstract to the official conference website in addition to submitting it for your travel award. And please ask any questions if it's not clear what that is all about. Yes, please.
Hi, Andy. It's Maggie White here. It's just a quick query, actually, or maybe a comment. I think it's perhaps to note is that sometimes the conference format abstract is slightly different from the CMS travel grant application format for the abstract, isn't it? And I remember from my own experience that I just needed to be careful to note that when I was looking at my word count and how long my abstract was. Just perhaps just as an addition, if that's okay, to your comments.
Perfect. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think that's a great example of where if there are any questions about that as you're preparing it, feel free to reach out. But thank you for raising that issue, that if to keep an eye on making sure that the format that you're using matches the requirements for both situations. Is that, if I'm summarizing that correctly?
Thanks, Andy. Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Here are some guidance to think about while you're estimating your cost. You can include airfare, personal vehicle mileage for travel to and from, say, the airport, or if you're renting a car, other transportation, other expenses. And one key thing is if you are sharing travel expenses with someone else, only claim your share, and then of course be ready to provide the documentation. For lodging, I usually suggest that you get an itemized receipt when you check out, or when you're making having your receipt that shows the number of nights, cost per night. And even though you're receiving an award, we still expect you to think budget conscious, try to make the funds go as far as they can go, maybe share a room to reduce the lodging costs, and then list only your share of expenses. And meeting registration, Dr. Stuckey already talked about how the banquet was included in the meeting registration this summer. And that there won't be a workshop, but there will be a field trip that you can sign up for. Okay, so going to Dr. White's point here, writing your abstract up to 1 page long using US letter size or A4 formatting is the guideline for this award. You should have a 1-inch margin, etc. And unlike the 12-point last time, 11-point this time. So anyway, the point is look carefully at the guidelines for which award, what situation you're applying for, and follow those guidelines. And a list below here includes, to highlight here, oops, I didn't mean to click that, the thematic session that you are presenting at the conference. So if you go to the clayconferences.org website, you can see a list of the sessions, and then include that in your abstract, which session you're applying for. And again, you should review the details of the formatting. Within the abstract, you can have text, introduce your research problem, provide your methods, results and interpretation, and your conclusion. And you may include figures or tables that can be embedded in the text. Placing them in a text box is helpful. And you may, for the figures, there are some guidelines here to think about for what reproduces well. So please follow the guidelines. Okay, so a last thing about sort of the research grant awards and the travel awards is that the top scorer for the CMS research grant wins the Robert C. Reynolds Jr. Research Award, which leads to a certificate and an extra $100. So again, top scorer means that there's the whole committee of CMS volunteers who are reviewing the application. And all of those committee members contribute to the scoring. The top scorer for the travel award win the Blair F. Jones Jane M. Flynn Travel Award and receive a certificate and an extra $500. And that's really quite an honor to receive these. So I'll pause there maybe and see if there are any questions that come up about, or other points. Please, if anyone else has additional thoughts that we might have left out to help the students.
Hello, Andy. This is Eugene from Texas A&M University. Thanks for the information. For the last item you on the slide right now, for the Blair Jones and the Jane Flynn Travel Award, do the student get additional $500, or actually you will automatically deduct some funds from the SMS travel funds there? Suppose in total he is going to get 800 from the SMS travel grant. Are you going to give him 1,300 or just 800 in total?
Right. Okay. So the question is, how will the funds be allocated, and how can the funds be used when a student wins one of the awards? Let's see. I saw Mary is on.
Yeah. Can I answer that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, please. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mary.
The award is totally separate than the grant.
Mhm.
So when you get the award, it's really an award to you. So you don't really have to tell us what you use it for. It's an award. So does that answer his question?
All right, thank you. Yes, Mary.
Yeah. So it's really yours to do what you want with it. It's not
good.
it's not tied to your research grant, or it's not tied to the travel grant. It's an
Great,
award
thank you.
for having the best,
Mary, does that come as 2 checks for the student, or is that?
Yes, it can. Yeah. Like the
Okay.
research grant, they would get a separate check because some people want their money to go to the school, but this is actually their money. So, and the same with the travel award. That's actually a separate check to them.
If the student, just to reemphasize that, if the student submits a travel grant for $800 for expenses for the trip,
Yeah.
then they need receipts for that amount. And then if they win the $500 travel award, the Blair Jones Jane M. Flynn travel award, that $500 doesn't need to be itemized and doesn't need receipts. The $500 is an award. And
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
So is that clear? You think?
I think that's clear. Yeah, and that's
Okay.
that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Eugene.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Okay. Great points. Okay, so wanted to give a little bit of context for the number of applicants and awards. So for example, with the travel grants, last year there were 10 grants submitted, and they were able to all be funded, following 14 submitted in 2022 and a high of 28 in 2019. And we'll say a word about that in just a minute, but in terms of the research grants, there were 9 applications in 2023 compared with 4 and 6 in the previous 2 years. Previously, the number of grants were more, say, in the pre-COVID range, were more in the 11 to 16 per year. And part of the reason that all of the grants were able to be funded was because members of the Clay Mineral Society were able to obtain external funding that helped support this effort. And so the availability of funds and applicant numbers may vary widely year to year. So it's possible that the CMS will only be able to fund a fraction of the submissions. It's also possible that we'll be able to fund lots and lots of submissions. And so the best thing to do is to just apply. And that way you know that you've got a good chance of receiving that award. Janice, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
I just wanted to jump in and echo that anybody who's interested in a travel grant or a research grant, please do apply. The CMS really wants to support student participation, both in research projects and travel to conferences to meet people and make contacts. And we try our best to get external funding, and we usually don't know until April or so what we're going to. So we can't tell you now, oh, this is a good year, apply this year because we're going to have lots of funding. We just don't know. And so we're hopeful, but some years it's very sad, and we don't get funding, and we're limited to what the CMS can provide, and that's, it might only be a few in each category, but many years we're able to get a lot of external funding, and then we can fund all of the qualified applicants. So if you might be able to go to the conference, submit a travel grant. Yeah.
And that's something I've felt about the CMS in general, is that there's a community of people that are all very supportive and very invested in supporting students in many, many ways. And it's a very excellent conference to go and be a part of that. Okay, so we're kind of coming full circle back to our summary of advice, which includes, we recommend apply for both grants. Please read the website and application guidelines and requirements carefully. We've got the research grant rubric here in the presentation you can refer to. Plan your reference writers in advance and provide them helpful information, and then ask questions. And you've got some contact information, and of course, clays.org is a great resource. And then, of course, keep exploring. And hopefully we'll see you there.
Do we have any additional questions? Feel free to jump in and ask your questions or place them in the chat.
Do I answer a question?
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Charlie. I'm a PhD student in Texas A&M University. And thank you very much for the ClayMinar. I just have a question about the timeline. How quick we will hear back result after the application for the travel grant? Because I saw the deadline for the abstract submission and the registration, early registration will be March 1st. And the deadline for the travel grant will be February 1st. I just want to know, do we need to wait until we get a result back and then apply and register, or we can just register first and then that's okay? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. Certainly the reason that we have the travel one a little earlier is to try to make sure that we have a good quick turnaround. As soon as that deadline passes, the committee is going to be working on reviewing the applications, and we'll try to have a decision out as soon as we can. So all that to say, within a few weeks of that deadline, certainly we should have a decision out.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Any other thoughts from our excellent group of CMS members as well? Very welcome.
This is Joe Stuckey. Just a further comment about the benefit of applying for one of these grants. You mentioned it earlier, but I just wanted to elaborate on it. Is this year the council adopted a new membership category called associate member. And maybe Mary would explain a little bit more about that, but by receiving one of these grants, the student automatically becomes an associate member of the society. Am I correct about that, Mary?
Yeah, yes and no, because they're a student, and since it's free membership anyway, they become a member when they do the travel grant. They will already become a member. Not necessarily, they'll become a student member, not necessarily an associate member, but going forward, if they, do the a paper or source clays or something like that, they could be an associate member. But as students, they're free anyway now.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected on that then.
Andy, could I jump in there and make a comment?
Please.
Yeah, so I've never been involved in assessing the grants for the Clay Mineral Society, the applications, but for other organizations, so just two pieces of advice, and I think you've covered them quite well in your description. One is the detail in your application, be as specific as you can. It's one of the things, and I think that table, that rubric that Janice showed earlier, summarizes why that's so important. And the second point I wanted to raise was that if you're trying to win a grant in a competition, you've got to think of something to put in there that's going to set you apart from your competition. And so I think that that's a really important point to try and make sure that you're putting something in there about the academic benefit of you going to this conference. That's going to somebody, and the committee is going to say, wow, that's really important. I think this person should get it over these other two. So I think those are two important points to remember. Yeah, thanks for putting that slide up.
Thank you very much for your comments. Very wonderful.
I had a quick kind of technical question, I guess. What is considered intracontinental for the Hawaii meeting?
Andy and I were asking ourselves that as well. And typically when the meeting is overseas, like in Europe or the Istanbul conference, then people who are traveling further need an overseas airplane ticket would be, that would be an international trip. And since Hawaii technically isn't on the continent, it could be that everybody's considered international. So we didn't actually discuss that yet among the committee.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so I guess people can like apply, and however much they know that their plane ticket costs, they'll apply for that much, whether it be up to 1,000 or 1,500, and they might get one of those.
I'd say let's clarify, and we can easily update the website, and we'll follow up on this and make sure to put a clarification statement on the website so that people can see.
Yeah, this is Mary. Yeah, I think the next announcement that goes out, we can definitely clarify that, because I'm thinking the same thing. Everybody's pretty much considered, it's foreign travel to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right.
But there is a difference from, people like me in California flying to Hawaii. You can get tickets for 500 or 700, but for somebody coming from Africa or China or somewhere, it's pretty far. Well, and China actually isn't so far in that case, but from Europe or Africa, it's pretty far. So they would definitely need extra funds.
Yeah.
Certainly the intent is to make the available funds go as far as they can go to support the students as it's needed. So trying to match the need with more expensive airplane flights with longer distances is the goal.
And the intent with the travel grants is that we're supporting travel, and it may not cover all of the travel that a student incurs, but hopefully their research group can also cover part of it. But having 1,000 or 1,500 should help a lot in terms of funding that travel for the student.
Great.
Thank you both for that answer. Are there any other questions for our speakers?
Hi, can I ask one more question?
Of course.
I know if I remember correctly, for research grants and the travel grant, both of them we need a abstract or proposal, something like that, right? Can we use the same abstract for them, or do we need to write a different one, like a little bit different one, or just could that be the identical one, or we need to modify a little?
The research grant is actually a 2-page description of your project, whereas and there it requires 12-point font and some instructions. So you should follow that on the web, but it's very different.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I got you.
It's different, and it's okay to use the same topic. So
okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's my question. Yeah.
It could be that you have some results already that you're ready to present, but that you want to expand that project. So the research grant should be for new work that you're doing, not for work you already did. So you're presenting work that you already did, and you're proposing work that you will do, but it's okay if the project is related and building on something, but it shouldn't be, oh yeah, I already did this cool thing, I want money for what I already did. You can't do that. It has to be a proposal for experiments that you hope to do in the future.
Gotcha.
But since you also, because you can apply for 2, if you win a research award 1 year, then you could potentially use the travel award the following year to present that at a conference if you're still at the conference if you're a student status. So
gotcha.
And many students have done that in recent years, so definitely do keep that in mind.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
All right, would anyone else like to ask a question? In the meantime, I will mention that this presentation will be uploaded onto the Clay Mineral Society YouTube page in the next few days. So that will be available. There will be a link posted on the website under the ClayMinars tab. And so yeah, if you have any other questions or anything like that, feel free to go back and watch this video, look at that contact information that Andy and Janice shared earlier, and reach out to those people with your questions. Yeah, I think that's about it. Does anyone have any last minute questions that they would like to ask before we conclude? Nope. All right. Well, with that, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Andy and Janice, for your presentation. And we look forward to seeing you at the next ClayMinar session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
bye.